session. It'll just be a minute. Maybe two. Helen was the one who pointed it out. She texted me. Yeah, Spencer. Ready?
There we go.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order, January 17th, 2023. Janine, please call the roll.
Mr. Harris.
Here.
Ms. Hattinger, Mr. Hauser,
Here.
Mr. Labutus.
Here.
Mr. Lang,
Present.
Mr. Marmy,
Present.
Mr. Rath,
Here.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Barker,
Here.
Ms. Blind. Here.
We have 8 here present this evening. Next on the agenda is the invocation by Mr. Labutus. Please rise.
God, we pray. Heavenly Father, as we come to prayer this evening, we thank you for this time to come together and discuss the city's business. Thank you for this day that you have given us, the day to serve you and to serve the city. I ask you to be in our discussions this evening, help them to be filled with your spirit, and help us to keep in mind your vision for our city. These things I ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
You please remain standing. Next, we have the Pledge of Allegiance. It's going to be by our 4th grader Logan Peters, 4th grade at Hillview Elementary. Logan, if you want to come on up and get started. Whenever you're ready, we'll follow you. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Logan. Good job. All right, next on the agenda, we have caucus. Let's talk to council, discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight. Do we have anything? Mr. Mark?
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to excuse council members Ryan and Ottinger.
Motion to excuse Ryan Honor, second by Hauser. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. Next, we have the minutes of our January 3rd, 2023 meeting. Is there a motion to approve that? Motion by Mr. Labutus, second by Mr. Harris. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. We have no appointments this evening. We have 4 reports from standing committees, one from finance, one from service, one from safety, one from capital improvements. Without objection, those will be received in file. We have 2 reports this evening from city officials, one from our auditor, Ryan Bubb, and one from our tax administrator Brenda Cooper. Operating report for the period ending December 31st, 2022 on both of those. Without objection, those will be received in file. We have no communications this evening. Next on the agenda, we have comments from citizens. This is just your opportunity to be heard. This is not a debate, not a question and answer period with council. If you just have something to say, we'd like to hear it. So this is your opportunity to be heard. If anyone would like to speak this first section, if you please raise your hand, I'll try to call you up in order. After that, there's also another section after the legislation. Ma'am, you want to come on up? Anybody else like to speak? Raise your hand so I can get you go on. Okay. Just give us your name and address for the record.
My name is Michelle Boland Smith, 237 Violet Court. I wanted to speak in reference to celebrating Martin Luther King Day. A person that inspired my life. I've heard a number of times in council that the homeless should be pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. To paraphrase Martin Luther King Jr., whom I consider to be one of our best spiritual leaders and orators of the 20th century, it is okay to ask someone to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but it is a cruel jest to ask someone to pull themselves up by the bootstraps if that someone has no boots. On another note, it was fabulous to see people working together in service of others all over the country. Creating in the style of Martin Luther King Jr., youth throughout the country joined in service to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday with incredible artworks and speeches. Many spoke of what needs to be done and to make our communities more just for all. It is heartening to see our youth all over be so wise and enlightened. I'm encouraged to see so many of our youth in our own community part of this group by engaging in justice for all through study and service. And finally, it is my hope that more volunteers come forward to help the poor and sheltered, unsheltered during an unpredictable winter. From experience, I found it a very worthwhile experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you. Anyone else wants to speak in this first section? Now's your time to raise your hand. If not, there's another section. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Attorney Evan Price, and I've been asked to speak on behalf of several game room operators about the proposed ordinance that's going to have its first reading tonight.
You want to just give me an address or something?
Oh, yeah, it's P.O. Box 40577, Columbus, Ohio 43220.
Okay. Okay.
And so let me first emphasize that the owners share the security concerns that were discussed in the safety committee meeting 2 weeks ago. And they would welcome the opportunity to work with the city to address those concerns. Indeed, one of the game rooms that I've spoken to first approached the city about licensing more than 10 years ago, which helped bring about the current ordinance. However, they share the concern raised by Councilman Hauser at the conclusion of that meeting when he asked, how is this proposed ordinance going to reduce crime? And frankly, they do not believe it addresses those concerns at all. Specifically, they believe that there are a few rooms that may generate most of the problems that are talked about. However, the focus on the state licensing process in the proposed ordinance, apart from requiring background checks for owners and a so-called key employee at each of these locations, there's nothing in that process that's designed to address locations that may in fact be havens for criminal activity, which appears to be part of the problem. Of course, the same is true of other businesses, bars, some convenience stores that just seem to attract crime. And the way to address that, they believe, is to focus on the problems that are existing with the current rooms. They believe these concerns can be better addressed by strengthening Newark's own licensing requirements. For example, 4 rooms paid almost $55,000 in licensing fees for 2022. They would support doubling those fees or even increasing them more, because they believe that would both defray the costs associated with emergency response and in all likelihood discourage some of the more problematic locations from continuing to operate in the city of Newark. They would also, a couple of suggestions they have is background checks for all employees. And again, the game rooms would pay the cost of having those checks done, but not just the owner and one key employee. And a number of them already do this for their own protection, as you might expect. One room has over 31 indoor-outdoor security cameras, and they provide access to those cameras to the City of Newark Police Department 24/7. They can look in at any time and see if there's anything going on. They have a panic button they can press so that if there is a situation, they press the button and the police can see what's going on before they ever arrive on the location. Again, these are things that could be addressed in the context of the ordinance. Also set the hours of operations. I don't know if there's a time frame when problems appear or not, but again, they'd be open to discussing that. One thing I know some of the game rooms do is they scan or make a scanned copy of the license or state ID for everyone that comes in. So if somebody causes a problem, they can give that information straight to the police. Again, that helps discourage people from causing problems, knowing that that information is there. And I know at least one game room has significantly reduced problems by limiting access to individuals who reside, in the Licking County or within a reasonable distance, because they find that most of the problems that arise from people that are from out of town, out of state, people who don't have valid IDs. So again, that is something that they think could be addressed in an ordinance to help address these problems. And they also believe that it should be up to the safety director or someone to be able to revoke licenses if a place is a nuisance. And again, we can develop a framework for deciding what constitutes a problem location, 10 somewhere between 10 calls a day and 1 year, but and literally revoke those licenses if they become a problem for the police department. And again, the game rooms are willing to work with the city to develop those guidelines. Now, the proposed ordinance currently focuses on state licensing, excuse me. But that will not address any of these practical problems. It doesn't, it's not going to require background checks for other employees. It's not going to require them to check IDs at the door or any of those things. And instead, we believe it will result in a closing, in all likelihood, of all of Newark's game rooms. As noted by Safety Director Hickman at the Safety Committee meeting, the state has adopted a hands-off approach to game rooms that are licensed by the city. And that's similar to how the federal government treats state licensed marijuana dispensaries, notwithstanding its status as a Schedule I drug under federal law. They've taken a hands-off approach, and many of the rooms have relied on that, quite frankly, for the last 10 years. They've operated for 5, 10 years or even more with Newark licenses. However, based on experience with other applicants, the state will deny licenses to any Newark game rooms that have been operating under Newark licenses because they don't have state licenses. And again, that was cited as a reason to deny other rooms that have applied. Well, you didn't have a license before you applied, or you were operating before you applied. And for that and they've been denied for the simple reason that they've been operating without state licenses. So with that in mind, just 4 of the rooms that I'm aware of the information on, they have over 50 employees with over $500,000 in payroll. In addition, obviously paying state or city taxes on that. And if the current ordinance as it's currently framed is passed, in all likelihood, most of those people would be unemployed in a very short order. It wouldn't give them much time to make other plans. So for those reasons, we would really urge the council to have further discussion. And like I said, they'd like to be involved in solving the problem rather than creating new ones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I know a lot of you are here about this gaming ordinance. It's on its first reading tonight, 23-01. So nothing will be decided tonight. It'll be read tonight and it'll be held for 2 weeks. So nothing's going to be decided on that tonight if that's why you guys are here. I also believe Mr. Barker was discussing maybe tabling that at the next meeting and going back to safety committee to have some more discussion on it. So if you are here for that reason only, you don't have to stay. If you'd like to stay, you're more than welcome. So thank you. Okay, next we'll go on ordinances on the second reading, 22-56.
Ordinance number 22-56 by Mr. Lang, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, Mr. Harris, and Mr. Rath. An ordinance amending the position classification, pay range, and department authorization tables of the City of Newark Department of Safety, Division of Police by creating the position of criminalist, abolishing the positions of communications operators, three communications operator 1, 7 communications operator 2, 1 crime prevention coordinator, 1 forensic scientist, 1 parking meter repair worker, and 1 police communication supervisor, and setting the compensation therefore.
By the way, that's $1 for your phone going off during.
It's actually my insulin pump. And I don't know how to turn it.
We'll let that go. Heard the second reading of 22-56. What is your wish? Mr. Lang?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 22-56.
Motion by Mr. Lang, second by Mr. Barker. Is there any discussion on 22-56? Seeing none, Janine, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Mr. Collier, Mr. Hauser,
Yes.
Mr. Labutus.
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy,
Yes.
Mr. Rath,
Yes.
Mr. Ryan, Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind.
yes,
22-56 passes 8-0. Next, we move on to ordinances on the first reading, 23-01.
Ordinance number 23-01 by Mr. Labutus, Mr. Barker, Mr. Rath, an ordinance amending portions of chapter 830 of the codified ordinances of the city of Newark, Ohio regarding the licensing requirements for electronic gaming parlors operated within the city of Newark, Ohio.
This is on its first reading. It will be held until February 6th or until something else gets worked out. We'll move on to resolutions on the second reading, 22-112.
Resolution number 22-112 by Mr. Marmy, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Marmy, and Mr. Rath. A resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 22-112. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmy?
make a motion to adopt resolution 22-112.
Motion by Mr. Marmy,
Second.
second by Mr. Labutus. Is there any discussion on 22-112? Seeing none, Jenny, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Harris.
Yes.
Ms. Hattiger, Mr. Hauser.
Yes.
Mr. Labutus.
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Mr. Marmy.
Yes.
Mr. Rath.
Yes.
Mr. Ryan. Mr. Barker.
Yes.
Ms. Blind. Yes.
22-112 passes 8-0. Next, if we go to resolutions on the first reading, 23-01.
Resolution number 23-01 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Mr. Marmy, and Ms. Blind. Final resolution project consists of constructing a 2-lane roundabout intersecting Thornwood Crossing, Thornwood Drive, River Road, and Reddington Road, including roadway realignment, driveways, guardrail, fence, drainage, water main work, lighting, signage, pavement marking, traffic signals, landscaping, building demolition, and a structure lying within the city of Newark.
23-01 is on its first reading. It'll be held until our next meeting on February 6th. Next, on its first reading, we go to 23-02.
Resolution number 23-02 by Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker, Mr. Marmy, Ms. Blind, and Mr. Harris. Resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to advertise for bids and enter into contract for certain essential supplies for various departments of the city of Newark, Ohio for 2023.
23-02 will be held for till our next meeting, actually almost 3 weeks until February 6th. And finally, tonight, we have 23-03.
Resolution number 23-03 expedite by Ms. Hattiger, Mr. Barker, Ms. Blind, Mr. Harris, Mr. Hauser, and Mr. Rath. A resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
And 23-03 will be held until our next meeting on February 6th. Yes, it will. We're not gonna do anything about that. And that concludes the legislation this evening. Thank you for your attention. Okay, next on the agenda, we have our other opportunity for comments from citizens. Again, this is not a debate with council or question and answer period. If you have a comment, I'll call you up. Please raise your hand, ma'am.
Linda Mossholder, 224 Green Meadow Drive in Newark. Just wanted to give council a little update on the warming center. We opened the warming center on a Friday afternoon, earlier than we had anticipated because we had 2 people who were walking down the street in that bitter cold and needed to come in. As you know, that temperature just wasn't cold that night. So we decided to extend our hours. We were open from Friday evening until Monday morning. And the people were very grateful not to have to go out into the cold. Nothing was open on Christmas Day. We were able to recruit volunteers on the spur of the moment. But we do make sure that if you're coming in to volunteer or visit, we would like to know, just so we know who's coming into the building. We were able to get some food because we were not prepared to be open for 24 hours straight. So that means, you know, having to come up with breakfast and lunch for a couple of days. The hospital did provide food. They provided a warm meal for the first night we were open. And because of staffing, they provided a number of sandwiches and ramen noodles for the rest of the time that people stayed. The hospital also provided transportation, which we're very grateful for. Just to give you a little bit of understanding of how important it was, one of the women who came in, was actually a couple who came in the first night, and they had a dog. She was walking, holding on to the leash, walking the dog. I don't know how far they walked. But when she came in, she started to cry because her hand hurt so much. We looked at her hand and it was awful. We knew she had severe frostbite. So we called the squad. She was transported to LMH and then transported to Columbus. They were afraid she was going to lose her hand. I'm happy to say that she was able to keep her hand. I saw her at the outreach the next week. Her hand did look bad, but it was dry And we were able to give her some antibiotic cream, which we keep at the outreach to try to keep her hand warm. Another woman got off the patient from LMH. She had no shoes. She had just socks. She had no shoes on. So we were able to get her, some of her feet covered before she had to walk through the ice. So all in all, it was a very good weekend. I was there probably about 30 hours of the weekend. I was glad that I hit all red, green lights going down West Main Street, because I was probably, driving illegally in a snow emergency 3, but I had to get there. So it was a good weekend, and just getting to know some of the people. Some of the people were still using drugs, but they came in, they laid down, and there were no problems. We had no incidents of anybody disrupting anything. So we are a low barrier shelter. We had 2 dogs, 1 cat and 1 kitten. So we did take animals, and the animals were, very safe. Just a couple of other updates on the homeless outreach. We figured out in 2022, we served an average of 103 people every Saturday. And that's an average. Not all of those people are unsheltered, some are just hungry and they come for a meal. Some of the services that we provide that are just not for the people who are living on the street is we will be doing another health clinic on Saturday. We'll be doing Hep C testing and treatment, HIV testing, Hep A vaccines, the 1st and 2nd dose, COVID vaccines, 1st, 2nd, and booster, and flu vaccines. Anybody could come and get those for free. It's not just for the people who are living on the street. But this is our effort to provide a one-stop place for people who don't have access to other health treatment. This past weekend, the Licking County Coalition for Housing, after a year of asking, did come and offered their services at the outreach. People were able just to go up and to talk to people, but a lot of people didn't sign up because currently for a single person wanting to get housing, there are 60 to 75 people on a waiting list. In order to keep your eligibility to be on that waiting list, you must remain in a homeless status, which means at least 3 days of not living in a place fit for human habitation. So a lot of people, might crash on the couch. They just lost their place on that waiting list. So a lot of people don't sign up. I was talking to the staff who were there, and they just cannot find housing. They have money to get housing, but there is no housing available. So it's not a means of some people do choose to remain on the streets. But there's not places for them to live. They can't get the services they need. We realize that we're just a staff gap, in services. We need to try to get people connected to the help they need. One of the woman who had no shoes, obviously her mental health status was not good. She was not disruptive, but some of her language would make a sailor blush, but she only did it in front of the mirror. She was cursing herself out in front of the mirror. If you lightly tapped her on the shoulder, she would, but then she became kind of clingy. I was probably, every time I would try to leave the building, it's like, I have to get a break, she would say, where are you going? Where are you going? So creating that safe environment for her was really important. So I just wanted to update you on those couple of things, and just I'm curious if anybody knows what the status of the opioid settlement funds are going to be in Newark. If has any money been received, and if that money is being received, will there be input from citizens on how that money is going to be spent? I know the county had 4 listening sessions to get information from people in the county on ways that money could be spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Crawford. Anybody else this section?
Daniel Crawford, 163 South 2nd Street. First and foremost, before I begin, I want to wish Councilman Lang a very belated birthday. I saw your wife a few days ago at Giant Eagle and told her to make sure she put happy birthday. I know I said it online, just like to say it in person whenever I get a chance. A few other things here. The last meeting, Councilman Rath, you had, offered an apology. I personally didn't think you had to apologize because you weren't one of the council people who I felt was offensive. However, I can't speak for Mrs. Bowen Smith or Mr. Smith, but it's still appreciated. At least the thought was there, trying to make sure you don't offend someone, you don't need to offend. I get it. Now, I don't come, also, Mr. Marmy, thank you for staying for like, I think it was like half an hour to an hour, having that great conversation with yourself, Mr. Smith and Mrs. Bowen Smith, and Council President Ellington was there for a little bit of time as well, listening. And so I know you guys typically are really good listeners and stuff, so that was very much appreciated. And everyone else had places to be, so I get it. Before I continue on that, one thing I actually don't want to forget to mention, I went on the website, those links are working now. The only thing I can't find is the archives of old meetings.
There's no archive anymore.
So thank you for clarifying that. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, thank you for addressing that issue. But on religion, and I don't want to spend my time here, because I don't want to seem like someone who's here to attack religion. I get it, like, I used to be devoutly religious. I always tell people I used to be the most religious member of my family for the longest time. And when I was 26, back in 2011, I converted to being agnostic. I'm not going to get into why, but I used to hold religion near and dear to my heart. So I know it's important. When you're religious, it defines who you are. It's your compass. And so that's important, to a lot of people. To billions of people, obviously. So I don't want to disparage anyone who's religious. I guess my point last time and this time was that, and hopefully this is the last time, is that we just need to remember there's more out there than just Christians, than just Muslim stuff. Like me, each time I've voted, I've probably voted for a Christian each time, with the exception of one time I know I voted for someone who was Jewish. I don't care about someone's religion. It doesn't bother me at all, because I know that your religious views do not impact me whatsoever, unless of course you make it a point to do so. So the First Amendment is crucial because I think it's the most important amendment personally, because it discusses our freedom of conscience, our right to think for ourselves. And obviously enshrined as part of that is freedom of religion. So this is obviously something our founding fathers had, at the forefront of the conversations, especially being part of an empire that was constantly, before that, bouncing back and forth from one religious view to another. It's important to protect religious freedom. But also, and after the last meeting, I had a little bit of an angry knee-jerk reaction, but it was a good thing in these meetings only taking place every 2 weeks, is you have some time to think, some time to consider everything. And miscellaneous comments, obviously, that's, your viewpoints, but also your opinions. Not everything you were stating as a fact. There's just some things I have to recognize there. My first angry reaction can't tell me what's indisputable and not disputable. Of course, that's just one's opinion that the Bible is indisputable, and I'm not going to debate whether or not it is. But just remember, I am not in a dangerous place being agnostic, atheist and agnostic. I never actually wanted to ever say anything about that in a public forum, but I don't think this is an appropriate place. But I felt compelled to, stand side by side with, the Mr. Smith and Mrs. Bowen Smith, which that is her last name, she corrected me on. Because I wanted to know that they weren't alone. So either way, I just want to come here and make those comments. Thank you guys for, Mrs. Bowen, you offered me a ride after the meeting, which that kindness doesn't go unnoticed. I appreciate, of course, my car was just parked right around, just like make myself walk a little distance back and forth to get as much exercise as possible. I do that at work too. So, but either way, thank you guys. There was more I wanted to say, but I'll just condense it to that, so you guys want to listen to an hour-long speech like I used to.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. This is Bowen Smith, but I think that wraps it up.
Thank you. I agree with
This is
Daniel,
Mr.
that personally, I think having multiples of religions makes the world a better place. And Martin Luther King was one of those people that was very inspired by Gandhi, who believed that he was Christian and Buddhist and et cetera, et cetera. And the point was that he gained from all of these philosophies. I would like to read a statement from Dalai Lama, because I think it's very pertinent to some of the situations that are happening in our city. Whether you believe in God or not does not matter so much. And whether you believe in Buddha or not does not matter so much. As a Buddhist, whether you believe in reincarnation or not does not matter so much. You must lead a good life. And a good life does not mean just good food or good clothes or good shelter. These are not sufficient. A good motivation is what is needed. Compassion without dogmatism, without complicated philosophy, just understanding that others are human brothers and sisters and respecting their rights and human dignity. Again, that's Dalai Lama. I thought these words were rather wise. Thank you.
That was pretty good. Thank you. Any city officials this evening? Now it's, well, first we'll go to the law director, then it's council's turn to comment. Law director Moore.
Thank you. First, Linda, thank you for the update on the warming centers. We appreciate what you do for all those around, especially with those snap of Christmas school. So I appreciate you and what you do. Mr. Price, thank you for your information that you were giving about our legislation change and your suggestions. My issue is you want to help us reduce crime, but by opening the doors every day, you're committing a crime. Steel gaming parlors are required by the state of Ohio to be licensed. All we want is compliance with the law. So I feel that by just turning our head to the licensing issue, our license doesn't protect you from state action. And by turning our heads, we're almost condoning criminal behavior, because if you don't have a state license, you're operating illegally. So I get that is at least my stance. I won't speak for Mr. Hickman, but that's obviously my stance as a law director. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank everybody who attended the Martin Luther King breakfast yesterday. That's probably one of the best breakfasts we've had for a long time. It was really crowded, had people standing, which is a good thing. So that means next year we'll have to find a bigger place.
There you go.
And the speaker was outstanding. He talked a lot about Dr. King, what he went through, how he used children to march. He talks a lot about Birmingham. If you guys have never been down there, you need to go visit that. I was down there 4 or 5 years ago, and it's a pretty cool place to visit and to learn about history. So, and with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mr. Houser.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to wish Councilman Lang happy birthday. A little bit delayed there, but I also want to thank Jeff for his efforts with the Fire Excellence Academy breakfast. It was a great turnout. I think that might have been the first time I've been where there are actually little kids there presenting, and that was a lot of fun to watch them do that. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Houser. Mr. Labutus.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do would like to wish Mr. Lang happy birthday on the other day, and thank Mr. Harris for his work with the breakfast yesterday. It was a great breakfast. Kids did a fantastic job, and it was a great program and a great morning. And I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Labutus. Mr. Lang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for the birthday wishes, Danielle. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for everybody who came to speak today. And that'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Need to call a finance committee meeting for February the 6th at 5:45 PM. I too want to wish Mr. Lang a happy birthday again. Hopefully you enjoyed a little bit of good bourbon. That's what I do on my birthday. So, I'm very, not only with what, council members have indicated about the breakfast. I've seen on social media so many great posts. It's unfortunate that I wasn't able to attend. I had team members out and I also, so I had to open up my business for that day and was unable to attend. But hopefully next year I'll be able to attend. I have heard nothing but great accolades about that entire event and that it's growing. And I know Mr. Harris does a fantastic job of promoting it. And just, it's just one of those events that just, you can tell that he's part of it because it's a pleasant place to go and to attend, and always a good speaker, and just sharing of breaking bread and doing that in the community is just fantastic. And Jeff, I want to thank you for your efforts. Thank you and what you do for that. So it's greatly appreciated. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmy. Mr. Rath.
Next, I'll call a, excuse me, a service committee meeting for Monday, February 6th. Kudos to Mr. Harris. Thank you. It's a great meeting. We should be getting better every year. With that, I'll pass.
Mr. Rath, Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Happy belated birthday, Mr. Rath. Mine,
Hey, Mr. Rath.
yeah, well, saying Councilman Harris, congratulations on another great Martin Luther King breakfast. You do as Mr. Marmy said, but you're all into that, and it does show. I was very happy this year to not have to truck through the snow to get to it. As was, I know the mayor, who's not here tonight, but he also did a proclamation for Martin Luther King Day. And I think it's the first one that I've been to in probably 5 years where it didn't snow. So that was nice. And with that, I will pass.
Thank you, Mr. Barker and Ms. Blunt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, sir, for doing what you do. I wasn't able to attend, or there's a lot going on in my ward that day. And with that being said, I'd like to thank the water department and Mr. Motter, Director of Development, for working on a difficult situation with the resident. And he's very grateful. We're still working on outcomes, but just to know that someone was there for that was a big deal. And I'd like to thank Parks and Streets for helping with the tire pickup over the weekend. We had 65 tires. I haven't seen that many in a long time. And it was really great to see the citizens and the businesses coming together. Businesses are investing in corners of their communities that have been formerly trashed or ill represented, for lack of a better word, and they're not getting anything out of it. And they're putting their money and their time into their community. And I thought, what a better representation of what Dr. King lived for was, no matter who you are, no matter where you're from, we're in this together. And things are going to get better, and they are getting better. And I thank Lindsay and Carter Brighton for showing to the Easy Street Park. That was really nice to have them come. We had a ball, again, just making it a better place for the kids there. And happy birthday, Councilman. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Blunt. Give Mr. Harris a nice job on the breakfast, as always. Good job. Thank you. Happy birthday, Mr. Lang / Rath.
I'm just trying to give Jeff extra birthdays.
That was a couple months ago. Thank everyone here for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you for giving us your opinion. That's the only way we hear something. And with that, our next meeting will be on February 6th, 5:45. Committees will start, 7 PM. Council will start. With that, is our motion to adjourn. Motion by Lang, second by Harris. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Second by Lang. We're adjourned. Thank you.